Hey friends, we're going to talk about a story in the Bible. In this story, we're going to read it out of the book of John. And I'm going to show you a picture. And I bet when I show you that picture, you're going to know exactly what story I'm talking about. So I'm going to show you my picture. Do you know what Bible story this could be? There looks like there's some bread and there is some fish. Well, if you guessed it was the story of Jesus feeding 5,000 people with just a little bit of bread and a few little fish, then you are right. And this, we're going to read it from John. It's also found some other places. We're going to read part of it from the book of John. So Jesus went across the lake, and people followed him because they had seen all the amazing things that he had done. And verse 5 says, Jesus looked up and saw a large crowd coming toward him. He said to Philip, "Where can we buy bread for all of these people to eat?" Jesus asked Philip this question to test him. Jesus already knew what he was planning to do. So what do you think Philip thought when Jesus said, "Hey, Philip, where are we going to get bread enough to feed all of these people who have followed me and who are hungry?" These people had been with Jesus for a while and they were hungry. What would you do if Jesus asked you, "Well, how are you going to feed all of these people?" You would think, that's impossible. We couldn't possibly feed all of these people. It says, Philip answered, "We would all have to work a month to buy enough bread for each person here to have just one little piece." Another follower there was Andrew. He was Simon Peter's brother. Andrew said, "Here is a boy with 5 loaves of barley bread and 2 little fish. But that's not enough for so many people." Jesus said, "Tell the people to sit down. This is a very grassy place." There were about 5,000 men who sat down there. Then Jesus took the loaves of bread. He thanked God for the bread and gave it to the people who were sitting. He did the same with the fish. He gave them as much as they wanted. So Jesus asked Philip first, "How are we going to feed all these people?" And Philip answered, it was a test, wasn't it? Jesus knew what he was going to do. Of course he did. He had a plan. Philip said, "We could all work a month and not have enough to feed the people, and they would just get a little tiny bit. They wouldn't be full." And then Andrew jumped in and said, "Well, this little boy has 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread, but that just seems like so little for this amount of people. There's no way, Jesus." And then Jesus started his plan. He told people to sit down, and he thanked God for the food that they did have. He thanked God for that little amount of food that the little boy had packed in his lunch. And then he gave it to all the people who were sitting. And the verse says he gave them as much as they wanted. That's verse 11. So they had as much as they wanted. So I can imagine that Andrew knew about the boy that had the small lunch, right? He had 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread. And Andrew said, "Well, it's better than nothing, but it's still, there's no way it could be enough. There's no way it could ever feed this huge crowd of people." It was just a little boy's lunch. But the little boy gave it to Andrew, and Andrew gave it to Jesus. And then Jesus had the disciples pass it out to all the people, and they had all they wanted to eat. So what can we learn from Andrew and from this little boy? And what can we learn from Jesus? Well, were the 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread enough to feed all those people? No way, not normally. That would be a little boy's lunch. That would feed the little boy, but nobody else. But Jesus made it more than enough. When the little boy gave up his lunch, and when Andrew thought of the idea that that's at least where they could start, and they gave it to Jesus, that it fed everybody. It fulfilled the purpose. And it was used by Jesus as part of his plan, right? He knew what he was going to do. He knew his plan was to feed all of these people. So I have this picture, right? And how many corners does this picture have? Let's count it. 1, 2, 3, 4. It has 4 corners. Now, if I cut one of these corners off and I gave it to you, if I cut something off of this picture and gave it away, then how many corners would it have? Well, if it has 4 and I cut one away, it would be 3 corners, right? It would be less. Well, let's try it. I'm going to cut one of these corners off, right, like this. All right, now I'm going to show, and let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wait a minute. We had 4 corners, and I cut one away. We have 5 corners. There's more, not less. Let's cut another corner and see what happens. I'll cut this corner. All right, are you going to count them with me? How many do you think we'll have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's even more than when we started. Is that what happened in the story too? There was more than when they started to feed all of those people. I'm going to cut our 3rd corner off this paper. And now let's count them. You ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now there's 7 corners. Last one. How many do you think there's going to be? Let's see. All right, here's our picture. Looks a little different, doesn't it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The more we cut off of this picture, the more there was. The more corners we cut, the more corners we made. And in this story, with just a little lunch, the more that got passed out, it multiplied, didn't it? It was enough to feed over 5,000 people. You know, sometimes we may think that what we can do is really small, right? Like that little boy's lunch, it was really small. It was not enough to feed that big crowd. But when the little boy gave it to Andrew and Andrew said, well, Jesus, we have this lunch, in the hands of Jesus, it was more than enough. The people had all that they wanted. You know, maybe all we can do is give a small little bit of money from our allowance or to someone who needs it, or maybe we can pray for somebody who is sick or in the hospital, or maybe we can just rake somebody's yard to help them out. And it may seem like a very little thing. But when we offer what we can, when we give what we can in the name of Jesus and serve others in the name of Jesus, he can take our little amount and make it something big, make it used as part of his purpose and his plan. And his purposes and his plan is always perfect. And it's way bigger than we can ever imagine. Do you think Philip and Andrew thought that all those people were going to get fed? No way. Especially just with that little lunch. No, they did not think that that was going to be able to happen. But in Jesus's hands, what was little became more than enough. And he can do that even now. What we can give becomes more than enough, becomes something big, and can be used according to his purpose and his plans for his glory and the good of his people. So here's your challenge. Here's my challenge to you today. Think of something that you can do all by yourself, or maybe something that your family can do together to serve someone else. And pray that God will use it as part of his plan for that person. Maybe it's helping out a neighbor. Maybe it's giving money to people in need. Whatever it is, So see what you can do, you yourself or you as your family. See how you can serve others and see what God does with your time or your talents or your money as part of His plan. So thanks for listening. You can try my trick with the corners. Maybe if your mom or dad didn't see this, maybe trick them with the corner trick and see how many they think will be after you cut some off. But there's more, not less. And remember that God can do so much more with what we think is really, really small. I'll see you soon.